We go through the top 10 takeaways of mandatory OTAs next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Happy Father's Day, happy Juneteenth, happy Freedom Day, and welcome back in. We have to break down some of these OTAs and just some news that we've received. So I selected 10 key takeaways that I selected. But before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe if you're out on YouTube. We're almost to 1,000. It's absolutely incredible. So thank you guys all so much. And if you're listening, give it a 5-star on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcast. Just search for Unbearable Sports. But before we get into the OTAs, I also have some more news. A couple episodes ago, I asked you guys, what charity do you want us donating to next? Before my friend, he's battling cancer, and I donated a bunch of money from the show over to him. Thank you guys all so much for anybody that was donating. And I asked everybody, and the Bears Cub said, how about the Diabetes Association? He's been living with diabetes, and my family has been affected by diabetes, and I think it's an absolutely perfect charity for us to donate to. So I'll throw links down in the description if you want to donate out there. But also, we now have merchandise. So I have some Unbearable Sports fans gear, and I'm donating whatever money that I'm making off of those out to the Diabetes Association as well as some fun little mugs, because I don't like politics. You got to check these out. If you don't like politics and like talking sports like me, these are the mugs for you. So thank you guys all so much for anybody that's donating out there. And it's just a little cherry on top for me to have us give back a little bit. So thank you all so much. Thank you for subscribing, and let's get on with everything. So top 10 takeaways from OTAs. So last week, the Bears had mandatory OTAs, and we have 5 on offense and 5 on defense that we're going to be going through. Now, after this, it's just the countdown to camp. We have a whole bunch of information on this show for us to go through about each and every position group, but really this is the last time we're going to see them until those training camps, which are a month or two away. So before you know it, it'll sneak up on us. But let's break it down into this offensive group first. So some of the 5 key takeaways that I saw. Number 1, Fields to Mooney. Those on YouTube, you see the question marks. Those are supposed to be fire flames, but it's question marks for right now. But there is no question, ironically enough, that the Fields to Mooney connection is the number 1 takeaway as a whole from this offensive side of the ball, because there's been a lot of reports that this connection between Justin Fields and Darnell Mooney is absolutely incredible. That there's some catches in the back of the end zone that Mooney's kind of coming into that number 1 receiver role. And it's also awesome to hear Darnell Mooney and Justin Fields go back and forth. You hear that Mooney's in the workout room and he's doing his own workouts, and Fields is in there and he's like, hey, Mooney, you got to go home. And he's like, no, you got to go home. And they have that just infectious personality where they want to be great. They want to be the best. And it's awesome that they know each other and that they're able to work out together now, rather than Fields being that awkward number 2 quarterback when Andy Dalton was in the room. So it's nice to see this connection, and all the reports out of OTAs is, even though that the offense might have not been great, it's really that connection still looks really, really good. So I'm going to try to pick him up in some fantasy leagues, but all my fantasy leagues are pretty much with Bears fans. So I'm probably not going to be able to get him because it's not going to be that high, but I still think that Mooney has an incredible ceiling, and I'm really excited to see that connection for sure. So number 2 takeaway, this was a quote from Justin Fields that this offense really isn't for a game. It's not set for a game right now, but it doesn't mean that they're never going to be able to play a game with this offense. They're just not ready right now because it's a new offense. They have to understand this offense before being ready for an actual game. So I know some of the talking heads on national media were like, oh, Justin Fields, they're not ready yet. It's like, shut up. They're learning this offense. It's OTAs. So there's still a lot for everybody to learn, quite frankly. And I'm glad that he's at least being honest. And you heard too that in some of the days, the offense did struggle. But what was nice is they were always saying that the offense was getting better and better and better with each and every practice, which is obviously what you want to be seeing out there from this offense. It's not saying all of a sudden they're destroying the defense, but it's nice to see progress because that's what they need with the new offense and a defense that is very simplistic as they've been describing. So, number three, this is a crazy quote. I don't have who exact said this, but they did say that Braxton Jones will be the future franchise left tackle for the Chicago Bears, that he's an absolute stud. And I'll link him out in the description too so that you know who said it. But Braxton Jones, the left tackle out of Southern Utah, is getting crazy hype out of camp. And I kind of love it. You see Teven Jenkins going to the second team, which you don't love. But if you're getting somebody out of this left tackle spot like a Braxton Jones, sign me up for that. And I know when the Bears drafted him, a lot of people said his athletic profile is really a third round type of talent. He really showed out in the Senior Bowl. And last year, I think he was one of the top pass blocking offensive linemen for PFF. So you'll love to see a player like that just absolutely come and shine for the Chicago Bears. And we talked about this with our draft review that there's probably going to be one offensive lineman that really sticks out. And I was hoping that it was going to be a guard, but hey, if it's a left tackle, I'm more than happy with that. We'll definitely need to see how he plays and performs when he's got the pads on. But he's learning a lot from offensive line coach Chris Morgan, where he's saying, use your lengthy arms. He's got incredible length from an arm perspective. So people are saying, punch them, get them off of their position. So he's learning a lot. And because he is a very raw talent coming from a low level of competition. So you love to see it. He also seems to have his head on the head on his shoulder seems to be absolutely incredible, where he's talking to Justin Fields. How do you prep for a game? And he's learning from Fields. So hopefully him and Mooney can kind of be this awesome pair, all this awesome grouping of offensive talent. But yet again, we're going to have to see that in training camp. And maybe this is just my personal take. I hope that maybe Borum or Teven Jenkins might move into that guard spot. I heard some people say that they still think that Teven Jenkins is best at guard. Some national scouts saying that he's best for at the guard spot. So we'll see if he ends up moving inside. But for right now, they're saying, listen, Teven Jenkins is the right tackle. And right now, he's playing with the second team. But also, I'm going to go down to number 4. So number 4, Justin Fields, actually not Justin Fields, Darnell Mooney called Velus Jones Jr. a weapon. Described him as just having crazy speed and was really unprompted. He just started gushing over Jones and saying just how great of an athlete Velus Jones Jr. is, which is exciting. We talked about this before on our show as well, that he is going to be most likely a playmaking weapon. Equanimous St. Brown has been kind of that number 3 wide receiver right now, that opposite Darnell Mooney at that X outside position. But that really means that Jones is probably going to be just that weapon, which I'm all for because he is a rookie. And I think that with that weapon type of title, you're going to keep them guessing. Like we said, he's very comparable to a Deebo Samuel with his speed, with his size. So hopefully we can leverage him like a Cordero Patterson, because that's another very, very good comp. Probably a more realistic comp, if we're being honest, than Deebo Samuel, who absolutely went off last year. But the last takeaway from this offense, Dakota Dozier, the bulldozer, carted off with a leg injury. The reason why I wanted to bring this up specifically is because of this offensive line. Dakota Dozier coming down and being carted off, I'm assuming it's probably pretty bad. I didn't see this, I didn't witness this, but if someone's being carted off, I'm assuming the worst. That's just the way it is. But if it is the worst and he's placed on IR, hopefully the Bears now can say, do we need to bring in another guard? because personally, I don't think Mustafa is going to cut it at right guard. And you also heard that Zachary Thomas took left guard snaps because Cody Whitehair had to be out for a excused absence, not a unexcused absence, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So they need to see, do they actually have to bring somebody in as a backup? Or that we've been kind of pushing for, bring in a Darrell Williams, bring in somebody who could potentially be a starter. That's my personal take. But if Dozier is going to be out for the season, then we'll have to see IR and maybe bring somebody else in. But just something to monitor in case if news comes out about how serious this injury is for Dakota Dozier. So that's the offense. There was some pessimism with this offense as a whole. There were some drops, but it sounds like they're getting better and better and better, and some reason for optimism with a Braxton Jones kind of coming into his own as it seems. So someone definitely to be looking out for. But let's go over to this defense. The number one storyline, you've already heard it. It's all over the place. Robert Quinn didn't show up to mandatory OTAs and wasn't excused. So what do I think about this? I might do an episode on this later on, just describing who he could potentially go out to. But Robert Quinn, if he's not there, he doesn't want a new deal. You can kind of assume that he doesn't want one because he still has 3 years left on his deal and he's getting paid some pretty good money. So chances are he just wants to play for a contender. That's the rumor. That's what everybody's been saying. And if he's not showing up, to me, trade him. I know he was fantastic, but if you are building a culture and this person doesn't believe in this and wants to leave, then cut him. Or not cut him, trade him. If you cut him, that'd be absolutely insane. Don't do that. Trade him for something because there's also a lot of good free agent talent like a Justin Houston, like a Carl Nassib. The list goes on. Jason Pierre-Paul. There's so many good edge rushers that you can get. And I'm always a fan. Just create a rotation of people that are very good, that you get the fresh bodies off the bench, hitting it hard. Why not? Why not? So if he doesn't want to be here, fantastic season last year, but we should probably move on. But I will say, though, that overall, I'm actually going to jump to number 3, my third point on this defensive takeaways. The edge rushers are really impressing people. There's probably a good reason, and it's because there's no pads. They're not supposed to be hitting. So you're going to see a lot of that speed. So we've already talked about Dominique Robinson really impressing, the rookie out of Miami of Ohio. But Carson Taylor is a brand new player for us to watch at this edge rushing position. So it was from Northern Arizona. He was a undrafted rookie free agent. And to be honest, the more that I'm looking into this guy, the more that I am just thoroughly impressed. People from Northern Arizona that have watched the games, not a lot of people out there, but the people that did said, this guy is probably going to be something. He's a very good athlete, and he had some halfway decent production with Northern Arizona. But as I'm watching the tape, you do see these flashes. He does remind me a little bit of Rashawn Gary coming out, where I always saw him as like a bull in a china shop. Mainly because he wouldn't use any pass rushing moves. He would just kind of smack into somebody, then smack into somebody else like a pinball. He would hit somebody, go to somebody else, and if he hit the quarterback, it was a miracle. So he's still got that strength, that speed, but if he can get coached up on using some moves, just like Gary, he could be really good. Not saying he's going to be a fantastic edge rusher like Rashawn Gary, but he's got a lot of potential to be somebody that could make a team and just get better and better and better. So when you have someone like a Robert Quinn that's like, I don't want to be here anymore, you're like, hey, we have some good talent, and this defense is saying, hey, we aren't afraid of playing these young guys. We want to see what they have out there, and especially since this defense is semi-simplistic, why not? So it's exciting, and that's why I'm excited for this season, because I can't wait to see some of this young talent that we're developing. Like I said, I don't think that they're going to dominate this first year. I'm all excited about the second year, but I'm excited to see what we can do this year and just all the growth of some of these players. But I'm actually going to go back to my second point in defensive takeaways for those that are watching and can see my agenda. Thomas Graham Jr. playing with the ones. That was the big thing, is when Tavon Young comes in, is he now going to be the number one at that slot corner position? Well, right now, Thomas Graham is doing it. And to be honest, Thomas Graham does not want to give that job back. Everything that I'm hearing out of OTAs, Thomas Graham is impressing. He's looking good. You see the highlight with Justin Fields throwing the pass, and Thomas Graham's hand is right there. It's just a perfect pass thrown by Justin Fields. That's a good play that shows good defense and an even better throw from our star quarterback. So Thomas Graham Jr. also had a pick six in one of the final OTAs. So you'll love to see it. He's really showing out, and with his determination that you've seen from the Chicago Bears side, he could honestly take this depending on if Tavon Young can stay healthy. That's the biggest question, is the health. He's been banged up for the past couple of years, and Thomas Graham's saying, I'm going to take this. So it's really exciting to watch what's going to happen at this slot corner position. But right now, it's Thomas Graham's job. It looks like it's going to be Thomas Graham's job for him to lose. So I'm excited about it. I'm a big TG2 fan. So I'm hoping that he does win that, because yet again, more young talent that we can build on. Now, the last two, I did kind of cheat a little bit. They're both Jaquan Brisker pieces. So number 4 or number 9, Jaquan Brisker just continues to impress. The more that we're hearing, it's just, he is so disciplined. He is so fast. He has a nose for the ball. They keep saying this, that he is going to be good. So for anybody out there that's still like, I wish that we would have drafted a wide receiver, Jaquan Brisker, everybody's saying he just looks different out there. He just looks quick. He just looks smart. He just looks to be in the right spot. He looks to be going after the ball like crazy. We talked about this before, learning the peanut punch. It seems like he's still doing that in these OTAs. So when you're around the ball, when you're making plays on the ball, that's just exciting news. So Jaquan Brisker continuing to impress, and even better too, Jaquan Brisker is most likely going to be we already kind of knew this, but they just kind of further confirmed it in a interview with Eddie Jackson, that him and Brisker kind of talked about it. Brisker likes playing in the box. He likes hitting. We know this. Eddie Jackson, we know that sometimes he doesn't like to hit. He likes to go for the big play. So he's going to play more of that deep safety, Brisker more in the box. Obviously, that does shift around. It's not like, hey, you're only deep, I'm only up close. So they will switch and rotate, but it's nice to know that they've at least had these discussions about where exactly each one's going to predominantly play inside of this defense. They do play a lot of cover 2, which means both of them back, and it seems like both of them would be able to play that, especially because both of them have played those types of positions. So it's exciting. It's absolutely exciting news. Like we said, this is all about growth. This is all about making this team better and better and better. So I think that the Chicago Bears team is taking steps in the right direction. You want to see this offense get better. And we'll see if we end up signing anybody over Dakota Dozier, or maybe we sign a veteran left tackle. If they're not in love with Braxton Jones, we'll just have to see. So make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, download the podcast, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, wherever social medias. Just search for Unbearable Sports. Thank you guys all so much, and Unbearable Sports Podcast, we're out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad chick.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.